Hi, my name is Tim, and I have spent the vast majority of my life in public schools. In fact, I hold two records that should probably never exist in the same lifetime. The first is I have been a high school assistant principal for more than 25 years in a row. No sane person should ever say that sentence. And second, I am the most suspended student from my junior high school in history. And they closed that down a few years ago, so I own that one forever. My truth is, I was often bored in school, and I didn't really understand how it connected to the things that I was interested in. So my natural inclination to want to entertain others was probably going to bubble up at some point, and that teacher was going to have a bad day. And I was probably going to have a bad afternoon when I got home. I got thrown out of my first high school. When I got to my second one, I stayed back. And I was in summer school every year from 8th grade until I graduated 197 out of 210 in my class. So, needless to say, at this time of the year in 1986, when everyone I know was figuring out where they were going to go next year, I hadn't even applied. But someone suggested that I should look at the Community College of Rhode Island. So I went down to the office and I asked for the application, and my guidance counselor said the words that have motivated me from my entire life. He said, "Why do you think they would want somebody like you there? Do you think you'll even get in?" Now, I don't know if he thought that was funny or if he thought that was an outstanding moment to give me some kind of a life lesson. But what I do know for sure is I slammed the door on the way out of that office, and I started to walk the halls of my school. And mostly I thought about my dad. My dad is one of the hardest working and smartest people I have ever known. In the daytime, he worked in a factory on an assembly line at A.T. Cross. And at night, he worked at a 7-Eleven. And every time I messed up, every time I failed, every time I embarrassed our family, he would sit down with me and talk. And sometimes we talked about wasting talent. But more often than not, we talked about wasting opportunities. Because my dad understood that you will spend far more time working than you will with people that you love, or doing things that you enjoy, or giving back to your community. And those were three things that were super important to him. And he knew that every single time that we were having one of those conversations, a door somewhere out in the world is slamming in my face. So it's in that moment that I feel like I have nowhere left to go. And I'm tired of embarrassing my family. That I began to plan exactly how I was going to kill myself after school that day. And that's when my life literally turned a corner. And I walked right into Mr. Rulo. Mr. Rulo was a social studies teacher, and he's the kind of person that really saw you for who you were. And he looked at me and said, "What's going on with you?" And I said, "I'm not even going to get into CCRI." And he put his hands on my shoulders and he looked at me and he said, "Everybody gets into CCRI. It's open admission, dummy." But then he talked about how much he believed in me, and that if I ever applied myself, I could do anything. And more importantly, if I did well there, nothing I ever did in high school was going to matter to anybody ever again. So he implored me, go there and do something great. So I took his advice. I did well enough there that I could transfer to Northeastern University. It's one of the top colleges in the United States. They only accept 5% of the people who apply there. And I graduated with a bachelor's degree and a master's degree with highest honors. My other truth, on the weekends when most of my friends were having fun, I was home studying and trying to teach myself those irrelevant things that I didn't learn in high school. But those degrees allowed me to take maybe the strangest vocational path that anyone has ever seen. The kid that never wanted to set foot in a school has now spent 52 consecutive years in a school. And I can't imagine being anywhere else. Because in my first year, when I get a kid like Liz, who an entire faculty is terrified of, because she grew up in a family with addiction and violence and abuse, and she acted that way. And 20 years later, she finds me on Facebook and sends me a message. And she said, I want to thank you for seeing through all of those things that I put in front of you. And she talked about 5 things that I did that I don't even remember that she said changed her whole life. And now Dr. Liz from McLean Hospital, who is one of the premier experts on addiction recovery, made my whole year. Or Matt, the Hollywood screenwriter, who I sat with for every essay he ever wrote because he never believed in his voice. And he texted me before the Emmys, and he said, hey, you better watch tonight because if I win, I'm talking about you in that speech. I have not forgotten who taught me how to write. Well, spoiler alert, he didn't win. He got robbed, in my opinion. Or Mike, the Division I basketball coach who came to recruit a student at my school. He didn't even know I worked there. And we ran into each other in the hallway, and he gave me a big hug. And he said, Coach, I have always wanted to be exactly like you. My truth is, when I was in high school, there was nobody who wanted to be like me. So when I was preparing to speak to you today, I've always considered this to be kind of a redemption story. The kid who couldn't get out of his own way, who eventually gets a second chance and does good things, becomes successful and helps other people to become successful, and most importantly, made his parents proud. But the truth that I discovered was this is not a success story. This is a story about contradictions. Being a legendarily terrible student made me a great teacher and an even better teacher of teachers. Being someone that never wanted to go to school has made every school that I have worked in a better place because I was there. Being someone that no one cared about ensures that when you come into my office, I'm going to know who you are as a person. Every single person in this auditorium right now has lived a unique life. And there's probably been things along the way that you wanted to change, whether they are about yourself or about your community or about something in the world. I am not here to entertain you today. I'm here to challenge you to take every one of those contradictions where you felt like you weren't good enough, or somebody told you that you weren't, or you quit because you didn't believe in yourself, and use every one of those contradictions as fuel. And go out there, starting today, and do something great. Thank you.